This will be a shorter episode, but it's on a project that I've been wanting to cover for quite some time, and that is Bullet by Richard Huang. This gem will alert you in a variety of ways when your application is performing an inefficient database query, such as n+1 queries, or maybe missing a counter cache column. Well, let's see what's involved in setting it up. Let's say I have this page which lists out various categories and a number of products for each category. So I have two models here. Category has many products. Now this page currently suffers from the n+1 query problem. We can see that by checking out the Rails log. We're performing one query to fetch the categories, and then we're performing a separate query for each of those categories to fetch the products within that category. So this is the n+1 query problem, where we have one query to fetch the parent and then any number of child queries to fetch the other records. Now this kind of problem can be easy to overlook, which is where Bullet comes in handy. First, I'll go into the gem file for this application and add the Bullet gem into here, but generally you only want to add it in the development environment, so specify the group like this. And then run the bundle command to install it. Now I still need to enable Bullet, which I'm going to do inside of the config initializers directory. I'll make a new initializer file called bullet.rb. Now since Bullet won't be loaded in every environment, let's first make sure that it is defined with a quick check like this. And then we can set bullet.enable and set that to true, and this way it'll perform the checking behavior. And also we need to tell Bullet how we want to be notified of query issues. And I'm just going to set alert to true, which will alert us through a dialog in the browser. So after I restart my Rails app and reload this page, as we would expect, we get this dialog telling us that there's an n+1 query problem detected with category has many products, and we should add an include so there's eager loading behavior in that query. So let's do that. In this categories controller index action is where I'm fetching the categories, and we can fetch the products at the same time by calling includes products, and this way we're doing eager loading since we need this data anyway. So now when I reload the page, I don't get that dialog box anymore because I am doing eager loading. And you can see in the log file here that we're now just doing two queries for this action, one to fetch the categories and another to fetch the products which exist in those categories. Now Bullet also has the ability to tell us when we're doing eager loading unnecessarily. So let's say we decide to move these products out of this page and maybe into the show action for the categories. So here's that index template where I'm listing out the products for each of the categories, but let me just remove this so I'm only displaying information about the categories. And now when I reload the page, I get another alert dialog box telling me that it detected that I'm using eager loading, but it doesn't need to exist there because I'm no longer displaying the products on the page. So I'll just remove this includes call in the controller, which would be something that's easy to forget if I'm moving things around like this. And now reloading the page no longer gives us that alert. Now something else useful is that Bullet will notify us when we should consider using a counter cache column. Let's say under each of the category names in this template, I want to display the number of products. So I can do that with a quick pluralize call for category products.size, and let's say product here. And now when I reload the page, it tells us that we should add a counter cache column for this because we're displaying the number of products and it needs to perform a query for each of the categories. And you can see that in the log, there's our n+1 query problem again since we're counting the products for each of those categories. I could fix this easily enough by going to my product model and in the belongs to category association, I'll set counter cache to true. Now I still need to add that column for that cache, so I'll generate a migration to add the products count to categories, and that products count should be an integer type. And it's a good idea to set the default to 0 for that column and make it not null. Now if you want this to apply to records already in the database, you'll need to fill that column, and I prefer to do this with a separate migration. Let's call it a cache products count. So in this migration, I could use active record to fill this column, but I prefer to avoid active record in migration files when possible. Instead, I'm just going to paste in some SQL code to do this. So this will update the products count on the categories and provide a subquery here which just basically counts up that products for that given category. So now I'll run those migrations. So now when I reload this page, we no longer get that alert from Bullet because it's fetching the count from a column instead of performing a separate query. Now so far we've only seen one way that Bullet can notify you, and that is through the alert dialog, but there are a crazy number of other options that you can choose from for notification. This is done through the Uniform Notifier gem, which is a pretty cool project in itself. So after you've tried Bullet out on your application, you might want to switch it to something a little less intrusive than the alert dialog, such as the Bullet Logger. This way you can continue on your work and just check this occasionally to see if there are any query issues. Now, one thing that's very important, as with any tool like this, is that you do not blindly follow it. If you see that alert dialog suggesting that you add eager loading, don't just add it in to get rid of the dialog. There are many times when adding eager loading can actually make performance worse, and you should consider other optimizations such as caching. When in doubt, it's a good idea to do some benchmarking to see the performance of different solutions, and also keep in mind the environment that your production is set up in can play a part as well, such as the latency of the database connections. Well, that's it for this episode on Bullet. It's a handy tool to find some potentially inefficient queries in your Rails app. Just don't follow it blindly. In the Pro episode this week, I show how to deploy an app with zero downtime using Unicorn. This way your users won't even notice you are deploying. I will also cover some gotchas that have to do with running migrations. To watch that episode and gain access to all previous Pro and revised episodes, visit railscast.com/pro and you can sign up there for just $9 per month.